Hey there, welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. I'm Pete Townsend, your co-host of Money Never Sleeps, along with a still on the lamb, Owen Fitzgerald, but we should have him back next week. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Ireland's fintech and financial services recruitment specialists, Top Tier Recruitment. If your colleague need help attracting or retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, it is highly advisable that you build a relationship with the team at Top Tier Recruitment. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. In this episode, we talk to Ivailo Jordanov, a venture partner covering blockchain and crypto with 7% Ventures in London, who I met last year at an investor dinner. Given where I'm headed with Norio Ventures towards becoming an early-stage tech investor, I'm continuing to build my network of like-minded people investing in early-stage tech companies. What better way to get to know people and explore what we both look for in early-stage tech than immortalizing one of our discussions on an episode of this podcast, and then share it with all of you, our listeners, to give you a look inside the mindset of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So let's just dig right in with Ivailo Jordanov and this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps.
Money never sleeps, pal.
Here we go again. Welcome to Money Never Sleeps. We're recording today from the home studio, and we have Ivailo Jordanov, a venture partner with 7% Ventures on the show today, who's on from London. Welcome to the show, Ivailo.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, Ivailo, we met in October after Corticon as my pal Graham Rodford from Archax invited us both to an investor dinner. We had the briefest of chats, but I really felt like we connected quickly. I really like the story behind the name 7%, which I'm sure you'll share, and we'll get into that a bit. But let's just get started with you sharing your backstory, how you got to this point.
Sure. So I was born in Bulgaria, and I was born in a family of engineers. So there was always all these gadgets at home and stuff like that. So I got into technology early on. I was always tinkering with a soldering iron since the age of about 10, and messing on the computer, coding and stuff like that. So I developed a passion for programming and electronics and things like that. When I was 15 years old, I moved to South Africa, to Johannesburg, which is, I always say I grew up there because I spent between 15 and 25, that age there, which is, quite important in one's life.
Absolutely.
And I studied there at university. I did a computer science and an applied mathematics degree. And at the same time, I worked for a very forward-looking company. It was an internet service provider that was bringing internet into Africa. But the interesting thing about it was that they were, when I say forward-thinking, it's more about the way how they treated their staff. Like the company used to buy lunch for everybody every day, something that back in that day was very uncommon. Now all the cool companies are doing it, but at the time, nobody did it. And so these guys were thinking about everything. We had an awesome chill room with pool tables and, ping pong tables and flip ball machines, a bar that was open on Fridays and stuff like that. And they really ran the whole thing as a big family, as a big community, which was super exciting. It gave me a view into sort of growing this company. And then ultimately, the company was acquired. So it showed me the first acquisition. Quite interesting how the parking lot got filled very quickly with pretty expensive two-seater cars with no roofs after the acquisition. That was in 1999. And so in 2000, I decided to move to London, and it was, again, with a friend of mine. He called me and he said, look, I've joined this new startup in London and I need somebody to head my development for me. Are you interested in the position? And I was like, well, what is this startup? And he kind of said, well, it's the next Yahoo. So,
Okay.
At the time, Yahoo was something quite hot and everybody
massive.
was interested in joining the next Yahoo. So I came over and the office was in the Truman Brewery. And I came in my first day. I got there and I was like, okay, I'm here to head the development team. And where's my team? And he looked at me and said, well, you're it. So I was like, what do you mean? He says, well, we're a startup. We don't have a lot of money. So you're the development team for the time being. So basically, I had to develop pretty much all the technology. It was at the time was what now is very common, obviously, with Google AdWords. But at the time, it was a pay-per-click search engine. It was what Google is today with their AdWords. So we enabled people to bid on the keywords that were relevant to their business, and based on the amount that they were bidding, we obviously showed them higher up in the results.
And that was in the year 2000.
That was in 2000. So there were two companies doing that at the time. One of them was called Overture in the States. It was a company that came out of Idea Labs, which was one of the hot incubators at the time. And the other one was us, essentially.
Yeah.
And so we built out the tech. The initial idea was that we were going to be a B2C company. So we were going to have the advertisers pay for the clicks, and we're going to build it as a search engine and drive traffic to it on a consumer basis. Over time, we realized that actually that game is kind of over. It will be very difficult without huge amounts of financing to do that. And so we went the B2B route, where we then provided our results to the search engines, to the large search engines at the time. And so we ended up powering Yahoo. We ended up powering Ask Jeeves at the time, was a big engine that was used quite commonly. Lycos, AltaVista, pretty much powered all the large search engines. The interesting thing about that was that actually on a technical level, it was quite a hard problem to solve, because effectively we were taking the load of all the search engines and running a real-time auction on ordering the results.
Wow.
Which was equivalent to sort of 3,000 queries per second, and ordering the results based on how much people were bidding, how relevant the search was. We were doing a lot of linguistic processing to deal with misspellings and all of that stuff. So on a technical level, it was quite a solid problem to solve. There was no such thing as Amazon, AWS at the time. We literally ran our own servers. We had our own racks, and we used to go at night and replace processors or drives when they fail and things like that. And the company developed quite well. When I joined, I was the seventh person to join the team. By the time we got acquired, and I'll cover that a little bit, but it was a 280 people company across all the European countries. We went through a number of funding rounds at the time, VC rounds, private rounds, and eventually we got acquired by a NASDAQ-listed company called Find What, which were doing the same as us. And they had IPO'd, and basically they acquired us because they wanted they wanted exposure to Europe, effectively. But in the process, we went through acquisition talks with Yahoo. They did the full due diligence with us. We went through acquisition talks with Overture, who ultimately ended up being acquired by Yahoo. So it gave me a real view as to sort of building a company from pretty much zero all the way to an acquisition, working with an amazing team. The nice thing about it is that because we were kind of developing quite well, we ended up only hiring friends and friends of friends. It was the company grew up to 100 people just by getting friends on board. And so it's sort of the culture of the company was amazing, because everybody was somebody's friend. And obviously that created a very kind of a good environment. Everybody was out together all the time. Lots of friendships were fostered and stuff like that. On the flip side, obviously we were building it from 2000. We got acquired in 2004. And obviously the 2000 was known as the dotcom winter. So as our CEO was always saying, it was like learning how to ski on ice. Everybody around us was going bust. I remember when I came to work for my first day, there was a building in the Truman Brewery on Brick Lane, which the whole thing was full of startups. By 2003, we were the only company there. Everything else was completely empty. Everybody else had gone bust. Which was quite tragic in a way, but it gave us this opportunity to learn, how to do things in a bad time, because that's where you really kind of excel. And taking this experience a little bit to my investing and sort of monitoring a lot of companies, it does seem a lot of companies that make it big, they tend to, all of them have gone through a period of time where you don't know if the lights are going to be on tomorrow. And it's really the ability of the team to take this and to turn it around, whether it's, pivoting the company, whether it's finding additional capital, or all of these things combined. That's what really shows how strong companies are. And that's what we went through this. We didn't know, there were certain days where we didn't know if salaries would be paid. There were days where we didn't know if the administrators would be called in and that kind of stuff. And we just, the team persevered and nobody ran away to a more secure environment. And, everything kind of worked out really well. 2004, we got acquired. The acquisition was quite large for the time. It seems nowadays, an acquisition of this size would be laughed at, and they'll say what went wrong. But at the time, it was $174 million acquisition, which certainly
pretty good size back then.
on the high scale at the time. Definitely. And since then I've kind of worked across a number of areas. After that acquisition, I took some time off. I was lucky that I had good exposure to the upside of the company, so I was able to take some time off, and I realized that actually time off is not for me. I got bored with daytime TV and visiting people at work and having lunches and everybody has to go to work, and I had nothing to do, so decided to join a large corporate for a little bit. I joined a company where I was looking after. They wanted to transition. They had a large business-to-business search engine, and they wanted to transition from a subscription-based model to a performance-based model, which was very interesting, very much up my street, because that's what I had been doing for the last 5 years. But I realized that corporate life isn't for me, and since then I've been in startups. I started a startup immediately after I left there. We started it. We got some VC funding. After the initial round was angel, then VC funding. Ultimately, it was in real estate. And when the real estate crisis hit, the startup was sold to the Trinity Mirror, but it was more of a fire sale than a successful exit.
Gotcha.
But that kind of reaffirmed that what I want to do is work at startups, work with startups. And then in 2010, a close friend of mine and I decided to start an incubator where we would just look at ideas that we like, build up the product, test it against the market to see if there's a business there. And if there is a business, launch it as a separate business, ideally funded externally for growth and let it go. And we had a couple of companies that failed. We had a number of successes. And at the same time, we also looked at investing in companies. And the idea was that we were looking for companies where we could provide capital and also provide support, mainly on the technology side. Through the process, we could build a very strong development team in Bulgaria, which was a team that worked for us. So they were in our offices. They were all kind of employed directly. And so it enabled us to go to companies and say, look, we'll put in some capital, but also what we can do is take care of development for you in our development team in Bulgaria. And so we did that with a number of companies. We had one that was a great success. It's still running now. The team is still housed in Bulgaria, where we built it for them. It's grown sort of, from 2012 when we invested, it was 3 founders, and now it's about 30 people, going very strong. And then some of our companies, again, some of them failed and some of them are still running. And then in the process, I got quite involved with blockchain and crypto to begin with, and then blockchain kind of going forward. More from personal interest. And as it sort of became bigger and, started to make a lot more noise and waves when Ethereum came out, a lot of VCs got in touch, and I started talking to a lot of them, kind of helping them figure out what they should be doing in the space, if anything. And one of the funds was 7%. And so I joined them as a venture partner to help shape the thinking about it and bring in some interesting deals to the table. Archax being one of them. I did an angel investment in Archax, and then now we're doing the follow-on through the fund, which isn't related to my personal investment, but actually it was always the idea that the fund was going to look at it. And so I was working as a venture partner part-time while still involved with our businesses, and I've recently joined them full-time now with
very good.
Kind of the growth of blockchain and crypto to look at the space.
Really interesting background, Ivailo.
Thank you.
I was trying to, taking a look at your LinkedIn profile before we started talking today, with there being a lot on there, obviously across all these different companies, it makes a lot of sense now, given that after going through those probably first 5 years after college, right, where in the like you said, being number 7 in the door, learning everything from soup to nuts in terms of startup land all the way right through to acquisition and exit, taking some time off and then figuring out that you still had the bug, right? Yep. That this was just going to be something that you kept doing. And was the residential property search engine Zoomf
that's the one
that you then exited? Yep. And then the business you started up to advise startups and to kind of incubate them. Very crystal clear. My journey is quite similar, although over a bit of a different time frame. But it's that bug that just keeps getting at you. But then you mentioned the word upside as well. Upside is incredibly important when you're doing this, right?
Yep.
Knowing that is there, and then it sounds like you went through. Okay, figuring out blockchain, figuring out crypto, Ethereum being part of that journey, and then right into 7%, perhaps some angel investments before that. So, really cool story. I like that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. When did you kind of realize along this journey, probably from 2010 forward, when you'd been advising a number of different companies, you're able to kind of get a good understanding of their value proposition, get some good cadence and repetition across listening to different companies and trying to help them figuring out their path to market. When did you realize that this was something that you might have some good skills at?
Essentially, I am generally like an optimist, so I always kind of think of companies as, this is great, and this is going to be great and big and whatever. And it's actually when I started to realize when I can dial down my excitement was probably the more important time, because initially, obviously, when I was doing especially angel investing or thinking of ideas, I always wanted to do everything because everything sounded so exciting and such a big opportunity. But it's actually when you start to really dial it down and you think, okay, this may be a very exciting problem to work on and, technologically challenging or in any other way challenging and interesting. But is this a real business? Is this actually going to pay back the effort and the capital that goes into it? And when I started to kind of be better at picking, even if I didn't actually follow through on an investment or anything like that, but almost mentally picking where things would be quite exciting. Sometimes it was a liquidity issue where I couldn't put in capital into a company, but I knew that it would be probably pretty good. And other times it was actually saying no to a company that actually sounds exciting. I'm in love with the team and, I really think they're cool, but actually looking at the business, it just didn't click, It's that time that I realized actually that it's more important to be able to be more critical. And figure out what isn't going to turn into a business. And that applied to us as well. We made a lot of mistakes when we were running the incubator. We got excited. We built a lot of things to a certain level. And that's when we realized there's not really a business here, even though it's a very nice thing to do. It's really just a nice hobby.
Yeah, I know what you mean. When it's you and your partner and it's really hard to kind of get that scalability of, okay, we're pretty good at something, but how can you actually bring in another 10 people that can be good at something as well, right? That makes sense to actually be able to do this at scale.
Correct. And
it's hard to do.
The one thing that I learned is actually it's much harder to distribute a product than to actually build a product. And that, because, building a product is not easy, obviously, getting the right requirements from users and understanding what they want. But, it does actually end up happening with most teams. But actually where teams do fail is actually distributing their product. And so in my mind, I've always tried to link this distribution to building the product. So that's why I always look at, for example, if we look at companies, look at the product people. And my first question is, are these product people good at understanding marketing? And then the vice versa, look at the marketing team and go, the test is, are these marketing people good at understanding product? Because nowadays, marketing and product are very much joined into one. You can't have isolation anymore where your marketing people are just bringing people to the door and then lifting their hands and going, okay, they're yours now. Or the product people just building teams and not actually thinking, how does that actually go into the distribution and how do you maximize the output of the distribution spend?
Yep. I'm with you. Tell me about 7% and tell me about the thesis there and how you guys are executing that.
Yeah. So we look at mainly to these two different types of businesses. One of them is a transformational business where a piece of technology is being applied to usually a laggard market. Something where you can capture a lot of value by either removing a lot of middlemen or a lot of process and putting a business that basically captures that value ideally shrinks it and captures a large part of it. A good example would be one of our portfolio companies, Flexport. They're one of the top freight forwarders in the world, but they started by creating software for the freight forwarding industry. And basically, they removed the number of the middlemen in the industry and captured all of that value there. And ultimately, it has to be a large industry with a huge potential. We always talk about $1 billion potential. The second area that we look at is frontier technology. So this is where the problem is strictly technical. You need to have a team that understands intimately the technology that needs to be built and obviously its application. But ultimately, the application has to be in sort of billion or $1 trillion industries. One of the benefits that we have as a team is that we're all entrepreneurs. And so we know enough about running companies to be able to kind of see how the team is going to put this together, how it's going to work out. And enough about the risk. We optimize for upside potential as opposed to downside risk. We talk to a lot of investors, obviously, and very often, people are more focused on what's their downside risk. And, they always say, oh, it's too early for me to come in and things like that. And, that's fine as a thesis. But, if you want to get sort of the runaway successes, you do need to take a larger risk. So, as an early stage investor, we appreciate that there will be a number of casualties in our portfolio. But optimizing for an upside potential positions us to capture the runaway successes effectively. So that's one of the things that we always look at as a company. What is the true upside, and what does that actually do for our portfolio if it was to came true? We treat our business as a product business where the startups that we invest in, or even the startups that we talk to, even if we pass on something, that's ultimately our customer. We want everybody to walk away with the right experience. Even if we don't invest in a company, we'll always try to be very quick at saying this is not for us, rather than wasting a lot of time of theirs with meetings and research and that kind of stuff. We try to be the first people to say it's not for us if it's not for us. We try to give constructive feedback of what we think would make it more suitable for us, if anything, or if it's just not the sector that they're in. We're quite open about it. And ultimately, the founders that we invest, what is the right experience that they should have with us as an early stage investor? How can they make sure that they can get the maximum value other than the capital from somebody like us, be it introductions, be it support, be it help with anything? We always try to be as involved as they want us to be, never really be asking for more than what they need, but always try to help with whatever we can.
And is that something that you guys do as kind of a formulaic platform? Or is this whoever's doing the deal, whichever partner is doing the deal, takes on that responsibility?
No, we do it across the fund. I mean, we're still a small team, but whoever is the best suited person to take a look and help them. We also have a number of fund advisors, effectively an advisory network. The interesting thing about our advisory network is that they're all LPs in the fund. As well as in our advisory network. So they're quite high-profile people. We haven't announced the network yet, but we are able to connect our startups to them to get a second opinion on certain things. The main thing about it is that, ultimately we've got certain skills, but we don't know everything in the world. And so through this advisory network, we're able to connect them to the startups that need certain advice and ultimately have them listen to what the problems are and help them navigate through them. All of the problems that today the startups are having, all of the issues that they need help with, somebody said them before. There's not that much new stuff unless obviously they're breaking some new ground. And so we try to ensure that our advisory network is strong enough to help them through whatever the issues are.
Yeah, my favorite question that I get from blockchain companies that no one seems able to answer, and it's okay that they're not, is that when you got a corporate coming in saying, listen, really love what you're doing, love the whole distributed ledger impact of that, but what are you going to do with quantum computing when it can break the cryptography of what you built? Yeah. And it's like, well, we're not there yet.
We're far away from there yet. Yep.
So what do you think that you guys can see that others may not be able to see? And is that something you can kind of link back to your time
between 2000 and 2005, right in at the bare bones level of building a business that you kind of then take and drive into how you assess companies and how you're working with them?
So, the one thing I mentioned earlier is the ability of the company to distribute their product, and the ability of the team to be linked across whoever touches your first customer, be it a sales guy, be it an advert for consumer businesses or whatever the case may be, to whoever actually makes the product decisions. It's that link and that and that connectivity within there that is the most important thing, because we see a lot of businesses that have a great product and nobody's using it, and it's not because nobody needs to use it. It's just they're not putting it in front of the right people in the right way. And then you have the flip side where the product is mediocre, but they have an incredibly strong sales team that drives people into the product, and it actually accelerates the usage. So we always look for how are they thinking about distribution, how are they thinking about who is going to connected to customers, who's going to listen to customers, customer requests, and actually ultimately build the best product that is difficult to displace by a competitor. That's the one thing. Obviously, as everybody says, team's important. We get quite involved with the team, mainly because we're also entrepreneurs. We can kind of listen to their problems. We try to help them and advise them as much as possible, and ensure that they feel like this is a good network for them, that they will be supported, especially when we're in a competitive deal that other VCs are looking at as well. We need to, our aim is to ensure that they understand that they'll get all the support they need, and whatever we can help them with. And then ultimately the technology, we have a very strong technology understanding. And if you're looking at a deep tech business, it's easier for us to understand the technology, how they're building it, the viability of it, and ultimately the application. And either through ourselves or through our advisory network, where we have some very strong technologists, we're able to assess what's happening and understand what is the opportunity there.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And given that I expect that you're investing both pre-revenue and pre-product, right? Is there kind of a formula there to say, well, I can see a lot of good momentum here that they're building? Do you look for letters of intent? Do you look for conversations with prospective customers? How do you get that warm, fuzzy feeling that, yes, there will be revenue and enough of it before my money runs out?
Yeah. That's exactly right. A lot of companies that we see that we really like the approach is they're talking to their customer before the first line of code has been written. The most important thing is that, you could get very much sucked into this customer research and do it for forever, and often that's a sign of procrastination. So you got to find the right balance of how much you want to talk to customers versus when you actually start building. So we look for that. Who's done enough research, who's done enough testing. It's not difficult nowadays to almost test your idea by trying to get people to sign up to a waiting list or something like that. We have companies that we're looking at, for example, that have built an advisory board from specialists in the industry, which they will be targeting already before even their product is complete. So really, that is quite a good indication that they've done their research, they know what they're doing, they're in touch with the industry, so they're shaping the product as it goes. And ultimately, the aim is to ship early. They have a trusted board, and it's not always possible. In some industries, you can't actually ship a product that's not complete. But in others, you can actually start testing early prototypes with people from the industry. So we look for all of that to understand, are they doing it completely in isolation, or are they working with people that will ultimately be their user?
Okay, gotcha. And what keeps you going on the tough days, Ivailo?
I'm, I guess, an eternal optimist. So I always get excited about what's coming. And so, you could almost in an optimistic way say that the tough day, the thing that you look forward to is when things get better, and things always get better. There's certain things you can't fix, like certain health conditions and stuff. Everything else is fixable at the end of the day. I get excited. I get motivated by people. I talk to people who are, like an energy boost for me. And, it's nice to kind of just get a second opinion and stuff. But ultimately, I know that all troubles ultimately go away. I've seen a lot in my life. I'm 44 now. So I've been through sort of the good and the bad times a number of times. And I know that, things just get better. And, optimistically thinking about it, that just pulls through everything.
Yeah, what do they say? The arc of the universe is trending towards positivity,
Yeah.
right? At all times. So no, I'm with you on that one. Definitely like-minded in terms of the optimism. And I definitely can understand how that sometimes can get the better of you. What would be something that people wouldn't expect to know about you?
Having grown up in South Africa, I can't swim, which always surprises people.
You cannot swim?
Nope, I cannot swim.
Wow.
I'm not like afraid of water or anything, but I never learned how to swim. I don't particularly have the urge to learn how to swim now. I've got my kids both into swimming as early as possible because it's easier if you learn it earlier. But yeah, that's probably one of the things that surprises everyone.
That's funny because my co-host, Owen Fitzgerald, who's not with us today, one of the stories that he told the very beginning, the earliest days of this podcast, was around how when he was, 16 or 17, he was hired as a lifeguard, but he didn't know how to swim.
Wow, that's safe.
Yeah. So, it was a shallow pool and he's a tall guy, right? So, and luckily he never had to get in. But kind of a skill set that you do need. Now, I was a lifeguard myself, and I did do quite a lot of swimming, and I did save maybe in, 7-8 years of lifeguarding, I might have had to jump in the water 3 times to save a kid.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of like, that's what you're there for.
Yep.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So email works well, irj@7pc.vc. Ideally, if they get an introduction, I try to respond to all inbound emails. If it's even if it's a no, not for us, if it's an investment opportunity or any other opportunity. But if they get an introduction, it'll probably be looked at quicker. Either way, a reach out would be looked at and responded to. But if it comes to an introduction, it probably just gets quicker. We get a lot of inbound. And naturally, as you can imagine, it comes through all sorts of sources: website, direct, LinkedIn. There's lots of sources. So an introduction just gets slightly prioritized, but otherwise, a straight email would work.
Yeah, I really do believe in the intro as well, and it almost has become cliche amongst the VC community. Oh, a warm intro always helps, but it's so true because for me, it kind of de-risks things a little bit. When you do get that initial contact from someone that you know and someone that you might have done business with or had a good relationship with or had a good conversation with that might have spent a little bit of time or know the founder of the startup that they're referring to you, right? And I totally agree that always helps. But what I also try to do is make sure that I'm not missing things, because it's not always about the connections you have. It's about the problems that they're solving and the great teams that may be behind that, right?
Yeah, and we see a lot of teams which are great and certainly fit a number of criteria to be backed, and maybe they're just not as connected to be able to find an intro, but doesn't make them a bad team. Hence why we always review everything that comes in. Unfortunately, in the blockchain space, there's a lot of garbage out there, all the way from bad ideas, which is fine, to pure scams. Obviously, it's the intro kind of at least helps to weave out the scam side of things quite well.
Absolutely. All right, Ivailo, I think that was a great chat. I really appreciate you sharing all that with me. And best of luck with finding the next deal and building the next billion-dollar business.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Money never sleeps, pal.
That does it for this week, folks, and thanks to Ivailo for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links and show notes for this and all episodes are on moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online. Remember, if you or a colleague need help attracting or retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, it is highly advisable that you build a relationship with the team at Top Tier Recruitment, as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for editing this podcast. As for me, I increase the odds of startup success. Get in touch through the contact page on noriventures.com, and you can follow Owen on Twitter at OwenFitzgerald9. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.